Welcome back to 20 Life Learners. Our speaker for today is Jordan van Tonder. Just over a month ago, this recent UCT business science graduate and old head boy of Bishops came out as gay. His journey of self-love and acceptance has been a long and tough one. So with this presentation, he will showcase how heteronormativity and toxic masculinity played a role in the 4 levels of conditioning that he has faced, namely within school, society, university, and stereotypes, as well as unpacking what it means to come out. In sharing his story, he highlights the importance of not only being authentic to oneself, but also giving others the space to do so.
Good evening, everyone. I hope you are all well. To give you some context, I think just the first thing is that I came out recently. So this is all quite a new experience for me. On the 21st of April was when I first publicly came out. On the same day, literally to everybody. So that included my parents, my family and friends. I got it done in one day. I'm usually a person of extremes. So I was like, we're going to get it done once so everybody knows. And I think part of my media post and going on social media was that I did want everyone to know, because I still feel that the coming out process is one that's actually quite difficult to do. And it gave me a great sense of liberation coming to terms with who I was. And certainly I wanted to do the same for other people that felt that they couldn't do so. So the basis of my presentation is conditioning. The word conditioning for me in terms of the context of this presentation was 4 basic, I would call them in my life, ideologies or structures or institutions that basically molded me into the person I was and didn't let me feel that I could be exactly who I am. So as you can see over here, we've got stereotypes, school, society, and university. To give you guys all some context, if you don't know, I attended a private boys' school in Cape Town, and it was an incredibly difficult time for me and 5 years when I was in high school. I think partly one of the biggest reasons of that was because the school that I did attend was predominantly white, and it had a very toxic masculine culture that made it very hard for anyone who wasn't the norm or who wasn't what we would consider heteronormative. So what were some of those concepts that I grappled with when I was in school? I think the first term, which I've got over here, was "brew, that is so gay." I'm not quite sure the root of where this term started. However, it was a term that legitimately sends shivers down my spine even to this day. For some unbeknown reason, I think people used to use this term loosely in a way that they used to use it when circumstances or events were less than, not really important, something weird. If you did anything that wasn't normal, someone would turn around and be like, "Brew, that is so gay." And I think for me, that made it shameful to me. And that made it hard for me to actually be like, wow, this is something that's normal and something I could come to terms with. Another part was that the "no homo dude" term, which was when boys used to give one another a hug at school, which I thought was totally normal. But unbeknown to me, every time a guy gave someone a hug, they would turn around and be like, "No homo dude," as if it was a crime for someone to be homosexual or for someone to have another feeling or feelings for a man. And I suppose this was just another term that really made it hard for me to come out. Whilst I was at school, I was someone that really wasn't a part of the sporting culture. I spent a lot of my time in musical theatre, music, and theatre itself. And whilst I was at boarding school and certainly in my school dynamic, there was a huge stigma that anyone that did musical theatre or music itself was gay. I was a part of a cappella group by the name of Simply Blue, and people had called it simply gay. And these were certain circumstances that made me feel absolutely awful about it. And I'm not quite sure why and where this has originated from, but certainly something that contributed to the experience. And morphe, the word, has been around for decades in South Africa, certainly something that people still use loosely today and is just genuinely not okay. Probably the biggest derogatory form of calling anybody a homosexual. So I think the biggest part for me putting it here is that it's just a no-go. And the next part of it was anybody who didn't play sport, you were less than. So I think my part of what I'm wanting to say over here is that if a boy chooses not to be in sports and chooses some other activity from debating, public speaking, or anything else, that was seen as something that was there was a prejudice to it. And I think because it wasn't normal, it made it hard for boys to actually do things that they loved. Society. So once I got out of school, or even whilst I was at school and university, I think society hugely played a factor in me coming out only later. The one factor of what I've said is heteronormativity, which basically is the understanding that heterosexual relationships are the norm. It is what is expected, and everything that isn't that is not normal. So if we think about it, it's from films, it's to books, it's to what we see in our early childhood books. It's the only relationship that we see, which makes it ultra confusing for someone who is going to identify, whose sexual orientation is not heterosexual. So I think in terms of films, books, and movies, they definitely molded me into staying in the closet because I felt like being gay was not normal. I think another part was the conversation that we, or anyone used to have, the loose conversation you would have with anyone on a day-to-day basis, whether it's a family friend or someone at uni, a conversation filler. So do you have a girlfriend? I genuinely think in our day and age and in the 21st century, assuming someone's sexual orientation before you met them is just genuinely not okay. I just put this here for the reason of saying I don't think it should be a question, and I don't think you should assume one's sexual orientation. University. University to me was quite a confusing experience. I suppose it was where I really got to terms with the fact that I knew I was gay, but I couldn't come out. And why was that? I think even in my friendship circle, my close friendship circle, I even had a circumstance where one of my friends directly said to my face that I'm a closet homosexual. And I think in those times when people said that to me, or even like the fact of, don't dance like that, Jordan, people might think you're gay. These were all circumstances and situations which genuinely made me loathe myself because I kept on feeling like something was wrong with me and I couldn't change that. And I think at university, I couldn't find a space or I couldn't find anyone to speak to about this because being gay or anything that I did was genuinely just made shameful to me. And I suppose the idea of university that I came to terms with was toxic masculinity. And it really came to light whilst I was at university, just looking at masculine culture. If you deviate from anything that is not your white, straight man, you're different. You're not normal. And that for me, I was always so scared in crossing that bridge. And that's why I just stayed in the closet. Stereotypes. These stereotypes that I put on the page over here for you to read are genuinely ones that I used to think about every single day, from my school to university to social situations. I genuinely had to think about my every single move because why? Someone would have been behind my shoulder telling me, Jordan, what are you wearing? You look like a fag. Or Jordan, why are you walking like that? You're walking like a girl. And as if walking like a girl is supposed to be shameful. It's not. And this is why it was so ultra confusing for me, because there were so many of these sects of society and so many barriers that were put up that if I decided to do something, I was immediately ostracized for it. And I think that's why it was yet again just another factor as part of my conditioning that made it difficult for me into coming and acknowledging exactly who I was. So, I finally came out. I think part of that process was genuinely I immigrated overseas in February and I had come to London in the UK. And I genuinely found that once I was away from those barriers that held me back for so many years, it led me to believe that it's actually okay. I saw an abundance of people in London from it's just a melting pot of cultures, really. I suppose from just seeing such diversity of interaction between people of different race, looking at even people in gay relationships, from lesbian to trans. It was alive in that sense, and I was able to understand and look at the LGBTQ plus community here, and it inspired me. And that's what evolved the change within me. When I did come out, there was a great sense of love and support from people, which I truly did appreciate. However, that was sort of contrasted with people's opinion of, it makes so much sense now. I always knew. And then I almost sat there and I said, well, wow, are you sitting with a crystal ball and are you a psychic to predict that I was going to come out the closet? It actually, those things can't be said about someone. And it's actually because I think it's not so much about me, but what happens if you've got your typical straight white male who actually may be a rugger-bugger? He may not be able to come out the closet because why? Because we've got a label of what someone should be like if they're gay. And this is what's going to make it hard for people to truly acknowledge their sexual orientation. So telling me that you always knew or it makes so much sense is not okay. Forgiveness. I think there was a great deal of forgiveness that I had to come to terms with before I came out the closet. And I suppose that was the beauty of the time that I had in London. I was certainly able to forgive those people that had bullied me because I realized that in London and where I was, it was greatly accepted. So why is coming out the closet such a big deal? I think part of the commentary that people said to me when I did come out the closet, they said, Jordan, why did it take you so long to come out? The world is so accepting of people who are gay. I wanted to turn around and say, but I don't know how you think that, because we still put labels on people. We still look at men today from any culture, any race, and we will mock them from what they wear to how they speak to what drinks they drink to how they walk, etc. And I think that is why coming out the closet is still such a big deal, because we still mock people for who they are. So that's why I said coming out the closet for me was certainly huge. It wasn't something small that I could just casually say. Love is love. I think part of the message of what I wanted to deliver to everyone today was that through this process, I have genuinely understood that loving yourself, and loving someone else combats anything in life. And the biggest gift of what I've learned is doing what suits me, because from that day of coming out, I don't think I'd ever felt that liberated, happy, and free in my 23 years. And I'd always crowned a term of living my best life, but I never lived my best life because I wasn't being truthful and honest about who I was. So I think the biggest message that I learned and I wanted to bring to the conversation today was separate yourself from what society expects from you, love who you are and who you want to be. And I think that's the biggest gift that we can all really celebrate. Something really resonated with me about this quote. Never be bullied into silence. Never allow yourself to be a victim. Accept no one's definition of your life, but define yourself. I think why this resonated with me so was because for so many years, I had allowed people to define me. And the message that I want to say today is that actually all of that fluff on the outside means nothing. The truth of who we are and who we are supposed to be in this world is in the inside, and that's what matters. So loving who you are and who we're supposed to be, I think, is the biggest gift we can take from today. And here it is. The last slide basically just summarizes exactly what I wanted to tell you all today, and that's that the best gift we can give ourselves is to be authentic. And I suppose also, not only for you to be authentic, but to allow other people to be authentic in themselves too, is exactly what I am wanting to share with everyone today. So Thank you so much for allowing me to present on this, because it was really something that I was quite nervous about, and certainly speaking about so soon after I came out. But I think, yeah, just to also say thank you to be a part of this incredible group of you guys. I think it's unbelievable, and I certainly feel treasured, accepted, and loved by you guys, which I just wanted to say I really appreciate. Thank you.
Thank you to this week's Life Learner. Please stay tuned for our next video.